What if I told you that being in the top 10% of wealth for your age doesn't require a $1 million salary, a fancy business, or a lucky inheritance? In fact, you might already be closer than you think. Most people assume wealth is this distant mountain that only the ultra-rich get to climb. But when you actually look at the data from the Federal Reserve's Survey of Consumer Finances, you realize something shocking. The difference between the typical household and the top 10% isn't built overnight. It's built quietly, year by year, through boring-looking but powerful habits. Let's break it down. The median versus the top 10%, what's the difference? First, a quick refresher. Net worth simply means everything you own minus everything you owe. So your house, investments, and savings minus your mortgage, credit cards, or loans. The median net worth is the middle point. Half of households have more, half have less. The top 10%? That's the wealthiest slice of the population for that same age group. The ones who've managed to turn their income into real assets. And here's the key thing most people miss. These numbers are for households, not individuals. That means if you're married or living with a partner, your combined finances count together. So when you compare yourself, make sure you're looking at household totals. Otherwise, the numbers might look scarier than they really are. Under 35, the foundation stage. Let's start at the beginning. People under 35. The median net worth in this age group is around $39,000, according to the Federal Reserve's 2022 report. At first glance, that might sound low, but think about it. Many are still paying off student loans, renting apartments, or just starting their first jobs. If you've got any savings, maybe a small investment portfolio, or even a paid-off car, you're probably already ahead of millions of your peers. Now here's where it gets interesting. The top 10% in this group sits at roughly $372,000. Sounds massive, right? But it's more achievable than you'd think. We're usually talking about people who started investing early, maybe in their early 20s, and kept adding to it, letting compound interest do the heavy lifting. Others might have bought a starter home that appreciated over time or built a profitable side hustle. To hit that number, you don't need lottery luck. You need time, consistency, and restraint. Because the math of compounding quietly rewards anyone who sticks around long enough. Let's say you invest $1,000 a month into an index fund that earns about 8% a year. In 10 years, that becomes roughly $180,000. In another 10, it's $440,000. That's the magic of staying invested. So if you're under 35 and have more than $39,000 saved or invested, congratulations, you're already ahead of half your generation. 35 to 44, the wealth momentum phase. Now let's move to the 35 to 44 bracket. Here, things start to accelerate. The median net worth jumps to around $135,000, largely because people are finally building equity in their homes or growing their retirement accounts. But the top 10%, that's roughly $1.42 million. Yes, a seven-figure number, but don't be intimidated. This includes households, not individuals. So imagine a dual income couple with a house, 2 401ks, and maybe a rental property. Suddenly, that number doesn't sound impossible. Think about it this way. If you buy a $400,000 home, and after a decade, you've paid down $100,000 in equity, while the home appreciates by another $100,000, that's already $200,000 added to your net worth without touching the stock market. Add in 401ks or IRAs, which most employers now auto-enroll workers into, and your investments start to grow on autopilot. At this age, the key isn't just how much you earn, but how little of it you spend. Because lifestyle creep is the silent killer of wealth. You start earning more, and suddenly your car gets nicer, your vacations get pricier, your coffee order gets complicated. Before you know it, every raise disappears into comfort. The top 10% avoid that trap. They turn extra income into assets, stocks, rental properties, or businesses, not bigger bills. It's like the difference between owning the stage lights and dancing under them. The power of dual income. Here's something few financial experts mention: the power of two average people combining forces. Let's say each partner in their mid-30s has around the median net worth, about $135,000. Together, that's $270,000. Now imagine they both save 15% of their combined $120,000 household income and invest it wisely. Within a decade, they could be sitting comfortably above the $1 million mark. That's not fantasy, it's math. And it's why, statistically, married households tend to have double the net worth of single ones. Pew Research 2023. So if you're in this age range and your finances feel average, you might be closer to the top 10% than you realize, especially if you invest together, plan together, and resist the pressure to spend like everyone else. 45 to 54, the compounding payoff. Now, this is where the numbers start to look dramatic. That's already a big jump, nearly double the previous bracket. But the top 10%? They're sitting at roughly $1.95 million. This is when the seeds planted years ago really start bearing fruit. You've got 15 to 20 years of compounding, career progress, and maybe real estate appreciation working together. But here's what surprises people. A lot of folks in this bracket aren't CEOs or celebrities. In fact, according to Ramsey Solutions' National Study of Millionaires, 1/3 of millionaires never earned six figures in a single year. The data showed that teachers, engineers, and accountants are among the most common millionaire careers. Why? Because they're consistent savers who don't overextend. They don't chase trends, they build systems. When you're in your 40s and 50s, the wealth gap widens dramatically between those who saved early and those who didn't. That's why two neighbors with the same income can look like they live in completely different worlds financially. One spent the last decade upgrading everything. The other quietly let their money grow. What's really behind the top 10%? If you analyze Federal Reserve data closely, you notice that the biggest contributors to net worth growth aren't flashy investments or crazy business ideas. They're boring, stay assets. Most of the top 10% hold real estate, often their home plus one rental, retirement accounts, 401k, IRA, SEP IRA, brokerage investments, index funds, ETFs, dividend stocks. That's it. Not crypto jackpots or penny stocks, just consistent, diversified investing. The other hidden ingredient? Debt control. Because wealth isn't just about how much you earn, it's about how much you keep. And the less interest you pay on cars, credit cards, or personal loans, the more your own interest works for you instead of against you. Now, remember, you don't need to be in the top 10% to live comfortably or even be financially free. But knowing these numbers helps you measure your progress realistically instead of comparing yourself to influencers or millionaires on Instagram. The big picture. So far, we've seen that being in the top 10% isn't about some secret formula. It's about starting early, avoiding unnecessary debt, investing steadily, and not inflating your lifestyle. But what happens as people age into their 50s, 60s, and 70s? That's when the wealth gap widens, and the compounding power either rewards or punishes decades of habits. In Part 2, we'll explore those age brackets, from 55 to 74 and beyond, and see exactly how wealth shifts from accumulation to preservation. We'll also break down what it actually takes, in plain numbers, to hit a multi-million-dollar net worth without ever earning a massive salary. Because once you understand the math behind it, The path to the top 10% starts to look a lot less mysterious and a lot more achievable. How ordinary people reach extraordinary wealth and what the numbers really mean. Here's something that might surprise you. For most Americans, real wealth doesn't show up in their 20s or even 30s. It often doesn't look like wealth until their 50s or 60s. Why? Because compounding is slow at first, and then suddenly fast. If you've ever watched grass grow and thought nothing's happening, then boom, it shoots up overnight. That's how wealth works too. Years of quiet saving, boring investing, and resisting lifestyle creep finally start showing results. So let's see what the data says about those who've reached that comfortable zone, where money stops being stressful and starts being freeing. 55 to 64, the freedom phase. At this stage, the median net worth is around $364,000, Federal Reserve 2022. Not bad, but still not quite enough for a stress-free retirement, especially considering much of that is tied up in home equity. Now, the top 10%? They're sitting at roughly $2.96 million. That's almost 8 times the median. Let's pause on that. The median person has most of their wealth locked in their house, maybe a $400,000 home with $250,000 in equity, plus modest retirement savings. But the top 10%? They've turned decades of steady investing into real financial freedom. Their wealth isn't just paper value, it's income-generating assets. They've got diversified portfolios, cash-flowing real estate, and retirement accounts that throw off enough returns to live comfortably. Let's make this real. If you had $2.96 million invested and followed the 4% withdrawal rule, a widely used benchmark in retirement planning, you could withdraw around $120,000 per year indefinitely. That's not Ferrari and yacht money. That's sleep peacefully, travel when you want, and never check the price of groceries again money. Most people who reach this level didn't win the lottery. They simply started early, invested consistently, avoided lifestyle inflation, and didn't panic when markets dropped. In fact, a Charles Schwab study found that 75% of millionaires are self-made, no inheritance, no trust funds, no lottery tickets. Just discipline and time. The hidden advantage of homeowners. By this point, homeownership plays a big role in net worth numbers. The average homeowner in their 50s or 60s has hundreds of thousands in home equity. And if that home is fully paid off, it's like having a guaranteed source of stability. No rent, no mortgage, just freedom. The irony? The people who get here aren't always the ones chasing real estate flips or Airbnb empires. They're the ones who stayed put, paid down their mortgage, and let appreciation do its work. Owning your home, investing consistently, and avoiding high-interest debt might sound boring, but that's the magic combo for building lasting wealth. Because wealth isn't about motion, it's about direction. 65 to 74, the peak of net worth. This is where wealth typically peaks. According to the Federal Reserve, the median net worth for this age group is about $410,000. That's only a slight increase from the previous bracket, and there's a reason for that. Many people have already stopped working and are slowly spending their savings. But the top 10% still holds strong at roughly $2.99 million. It barely rises because at this stage, most people shift from growing wealth to protecting it. Now, let's visualize this. Imagine someone who started investing $1,900 a month at age 35. That's about 15% of a $150,000 household income. If they invested consistently for 30 years in an S&P 500 index fund with an average return of 8%, they'd end up with roughly $2.3 million, even after adjusting for inflation. That's not a fantasy, it's just math. So the millionaires in this group, they aren't all CEOs or Wall Street brokers. They're engineers, teachers, small business owners, and disciplined savers who started early and stayed consistent. By this age, many are living in paid-off homes, driving reliable cars, and enjoying a lifestyle that's comfortable, not extravagant. Vacations? Yes. Financial anxiety? Not really. And here's something powerful. Even with a few financial mistakes along the way, decades of compounding have a way of forgiving you. 75 and beyond, the spending years. After age 75, net worth typically dips. The median drops to around $333,000, while the top 10% slightly decreases to about $2.68 million. And that makes sense. This is the season of spending what you saved. People draw down investments to cover living costs, travel, healthcare, and sometimes help their kids or grandkids. It's not a decline in wealth. It's the natural rhythm of a well-lived financial life. Interestingly, many in this age group aren't interested in hoarding money. They prioritize freedom and purpose over accumulation. Because by now, wealth isn't about status, it's about peace. The massive gap, median versus top 10%. By this point, you've probably noticed the staggering difference between the middle and the top. At every age bracket, the top 10% have between 6 to 10 times the net worth of the median. And the reason isn't that they're geniuses or lucky, it's that they play a longer game. The median person often treats money reactively, saving what's left over, investing inconsistently, and chasing comfort. The top 10% treat money strategically. They automate saving, invest during downturns, and think decades ahead instead of weeks. They understand that wealth is a habit, not a headline. The math of the millionaire mindset. Let's do a quick thought experiment. Say you're 30 years old and you want to be in the top 10% by the time you're 60. You need about $3 million in net worth by then. Now, assuming your home equity and assets cover $750,000 of that, you'll need $2.25 million in investments. That means investing roughly $1,900 a month for 30 years in a broad index fund like the S&P 500, which historically returns 7 to 8% annually. It's not easy, but it's doable. It doesn't require a $500K salary, it requires consistency. Even earning $75,000 a year, if you can invest 25 to 30% and live below your means, you could reach that number. The secret is boring discipline that compounds into freedom. Why above median already means you're winning. Now, here's something most people never appreciate. If your net worth is above the median for your age, you're already doing well. Seriously. Because the habits that got you above the median, saving, investing, avoiding debt, are the exact same habits that, given time, will pull you closer to the top 10%. Every dollar you save and invest now isn't just money, it's a vote for your future freedom. It's time you buy back later. So instead of thinking, I'll never be a millionaire, think, how can I build momentum every year? The real definition of wealth. Here's the truth. Wealth isn't about having a huge number in your bank account. It's about having options. The option to work because you want to, not because you have to. The option to take a month off, help family, or start something new without panic. The option to live life on your terms. And that's what the top 10% really represents. Not superiority, but freedom. You don't need a high IQ or special connections to get there. You just need patience, good habits, and the courage to think long-term while everyone else is chasing short-term pleasure. Because at the end of the day, wealth isn't a finish line. It's a lifestyle built one smart choice at a time. So the next time you hear about the top 10%, don't treat it like a distant club. Think of it as a mirror showing what's possible with steady effort. Because the only real difference between the median and the top isn't luck or intelligence, it's consistency. And the sooner you start, the closer you'll be to joining that group that doesn't just make money, they make freedom